Hi, and welcome to another interview for the Ely Brick Show. Today we've got Chris from Gold Brick Productions, who's going to show us how he does his animation. First off, we'll show a little clip from one of his films. So this is called The Blendtastic 3000.
Are you sick and tired of not being able to slice, dice, and blend your way throughout the kitchen?
I can't cook.
Well, then we have the product for you. Introducing the Blendtastic 3000, the ultimate kitchen tool for slicing, dicing, and blending.
That is really good, Chris. It's one of my favorite, actually, from your channels.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you can maybe show us how it's done. Let me just put you in the frame. There we go.
Sounds good.
I'll hand over to you to tell us a bit more.
Sounds good. Well, like Duncan said, hello, I'm Chris. My YouTube channel is called Gold Brick Productions. I've been animating for about 9 or 10 years. I have to look up the channel was created date to remember for sure, but I've been doing this for quite a bit now. The thing about Lego animation, personally, I think it's probably the closest to like actual play of many other different Lego hobbies. Because as kids, we grab our different characters, these two being my particular favorites, and we sort of reenact scenes where they're in some sort of story or some sort of confrontation. And I think brick filming is kind of a natural extension of that, except instead of just doing it in the basement with your siblings and creating crazy stories that nobody will ever see, you structure it into a narrative that other people will be able to watch. So now you're suddenly focusing on cameras, lighting, script writing, etc. The fun thing about that clip for Blendtastic 3000 was it was part of an animation challenge, or I guess more of a collaboration. So Zach Macias, he's pretty famous in the brick film community, and he's also known as Mind Game Studios, put together a collaboration for people who were under quarantine during the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we all had this idea to submit these short little clips and make this one big kind of reel, almost like a Robot Chicken episode. And I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do for my clip. And the thing is, Zach wanted shorter clips, but I have a tendency to really make longer, crazier things that are really hard to contain. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to go ahead and make like an infomercial and have just enough almost disjointed scenes to where if I need to, I can clip them apart and reassemble them into a shorter version for the collaboration. I was working with a couple of my friends at the time from the group called Frame 100 Podcast. We do a lot of animations together, and we're in voice chats all the time as we're working on these. And my friend Sam, he stole my idea initially. I mean, I tease. He had the idea to do a cop thriller sort of trailer, and I thought about going with that idea originally. But then as I realized that I didn't want to just copy him, I went ahead and started assembling random pieces together, grabbed that little 1x1 printed plate off of my Kylo Ren brickhead, and thought, it's a blender. How in the world am I going to sell a blender? And then everything just sort of fell into place from there. Just one step at a time.
So how do you actually start? What do you do? What's the first thing you do to do an animation?
Usually the first thing I do, officially I write a script. Unofficially, I usually grab a bunch of Lego bricks, some minifigures, and I just start building random odds and ends. And if an idea strikes me, I'll run with it. And if I'm not quite sure where I'm at, that's usually when I consult friends or just start taking apart other things together. So for Blendtastic, it really started with just making a random blender and thinking, this is a funny little build. What can I do with this? Then I guess what really gets the actual animation going is script writing. So I try to write up all my scripts. I try to stick with the screenplay format so it's easy for me to read and for other actors to read. And then usually right around then, if I'm pretty confident in the script, I'll send it off to a couple friends, show them whatever little bits and pieces I put together. And if they think it's a good idea and worth pursuing, then I go for it. And if they're just not quite sure, then usually I take that as a hint that maybe I need to think this through a little bit more and see where I can go from there.
So your scripts, are they storyboards of how you're going to move the figures and where they're going to go and stuff like that? Or
I wish I was professional enough to use storyboards.
all right. So it's just very basic then, an outline of what you're going to do.
Pretty much. I focus mostly on the dialogue, the overall flow of the scenes, the narrative. Sometimes I'll put in little sarcastic notes here and there just to remind me of the general feeling I was going for in a film. I've thought about doing storyboards in the past, actually. There's been a number of people in the community who've been trying to get more into that. What's really difficult, though, is that a storyboard for an animation helps you draw up a rough concept before you actually put together a final drawing or a final rendering. Like you think of, say, the storyboards for a Pixar movie, considering how intricate their models are, you have to use a rough drawing to kind of figure out where you want to go before you try and render an entire Woody or Buzz Lightyear or something. The trick with Lego, though, is that for the most part, Lego's already rendered most of the assets that we use for our animations. So kind of having them here in front and the ability to just play around and build with them as you go, it sort of negates the need for a storyboard, I would almost argue.
So how many shots? I presume you photograph each scene as a one frame and then move the figure slightly. Do you? Can you show us anything like that? What you actually do?
Yeah. In fact, I have Dragon Frame open right here, and if the controller wants to, oh yeah, now you want to activate. Here, I'll turn my camera here. So this is the software that I like to use for my animation. It's called Dragon Frame. You can get it for fairly cheap with a student license, but this is pretty professional grade. Leica uses it. Aardman Animations uses it. Virtually anybody who wants to get into stop motion on a professional level, who needs tracking tools or whatnot, they really recommend Dragon Frame. And so what I do here is I'll line up my picture here in the window using my camera, which right now is kind of hidden back here.
All right, okay.
So then if I put this down near my set, which is this big tan base plate right here, I try to orient my lights so that way I'm getting whatever sort of mood and color I want. And then over here, if I want to, I'll check this preview frame over here. So it'll show me like the different color schemes I'm looking at, where my camera settings are at. Maybe I'll adjust my ISO a little bit here. There we go, that's a little more vibrant. And once I feel pretty confident overall with the picture, I can jump into my audio here. And this is where I put in, say, my voice acting or my realist sounds or whatnot. I used to animate with not having the sounds there. I just follow the script and kind of guess on how much time it would take to say a line. That was horrible. I'm never doing it again.
All right.
So now I try to sync up my images with the audio. And once I know that the image looks good and that the audio here is behaving the way I want it to, then I just hit the button and it loads up the image and I'm all good to go for the next shot.
Right. So that controls the camera and then puts it onto the computer.
Yep, exactly.
Right.
Dragon Frame files get pretty huge if you use a DSLR camera because it tries to save high-res shots of everything. And then when you're done, you'll export it into a smaller movie file that's a little more manageable for video editing.
Yeah, yeah. So how many shots on say the Blender Fantastic did you actually take, do you think?
Well, let's see. I animate about 15 frames per second. So for every second of video, I take 15 individual pictures.
Right.
The Blendtastic 3000 is about 1 minute 30 seconds. So if I do some quick mental math, it's about 1,500 pictures.
Right.
And for larger animations, sometimes I'm looking up in, say, the 4,000 or 5,000s for a shot. I think I got close to 10,000 on a really long brick film.
Wow. Okay.
It's quite a bit to manage.
Yeah. So how long does it? How long did it take you to make Blendtastic then?
I believe that one took about a week from script writing to actual animation.
All right.
So
okay.
earlier in the year, and especially with being indoors, I was trying to find ways to make quicker films so they'd be shorter in length, kind of focus on 1 or 2 jokes, and not really take too much to animate, just to really see how I could push myself with the process. Blendtastic took about less than a week to plan overall, and I believe I finished all the animation in about a weekend.
All right, okay. So it wasn't too long.
Yeah, not too bad. I've
Right.
had some projects where I've taken over a year. I'm not exactly proud of that. I could have gone a lot faster.
Well, I've done some animation. I did a castle, and we sort
Nice.
of just put the camera on a tripod and took loads of pictures. But there wasn't any voiceover or anything. But you've gone up there probably 3 or 4 levels from me. So that's really clever.
What's crazy is I have a lot of friends I've talked to. They say, I used to do Lego animation, or, I did a little bit of stop motion. Honestly, once you start with the first principles, it's pretty easy to just scale up from there. There really isn't a lot of difference between, a quick castle shot versus, a brick film for a collaboration or festival. Really what changes is you're just playing in front of the camera. And then as you learn your software and as you learn certain tools and tricks of the trade, and especially when you watch the Lego movie frame by frame, you start to pick up on little details you can just use to spice things up.
So for our younger viewers, sort of say somebody who's 13 or 14, what would you recommend for them to start with? Because obviously they're not going to have the equipment that you've got, but how would they start simply doing it?
Well, if it was a few years ago, and pardon my reach here, I would kind of struggle to answer the question. But fortunately, smartphones have made things so much easier. There are tons of stop motion apps. Smartphone cameras are pretty powerful, and these days they often allow you to use manual settings if you want to adjust things. I got 2 friends that do a lot of animation with their phones. One is Lainey Mations. She used to do everything on a smartphone and only recently just started a computer because she wanted to play more with different camera techniques. And then another guy named Spinjitzu Master Falcon who does a ton of Ninjago fight scenes. They're all on a phone, and I'm still not convinced they're on a phone. So yeah, get a stop motion app. It's the best place to start.
So it's as simple as that. And would the best animation be just a moving figure to start with, just to get practice and see how it's done, or would that be the simplest way?
I think so, yeah. If you could do something like basic arm movements, it's pretty good. A lot of people like to jump into walking cycles and walking animations. That's tricky about it is once you start, you keep trying to want to tune it. And next thing you know, you have a ton of walk cycle animations on your YouTube channel and really not much else.
Yeah.
So walking is something where I'd practice it a few times, but certainly don't obsess if it doesn't look perfect. In fact, many of the walking animations in, say, the Lego movie are on a complete other level of action and exaggeration because they try to avoid the standard, say, classic walk cycle that you see in a lot of films.
Right. So what sort of plans have you got for the future for animation? Have you got anything in the pipeline at the moment?
Well, I got one film that's currently in the works. So I have an ongoing series called Bob and Randy. It's about the adventures of a group of roommates. And we have an episode that's sort of based around sort of Mad Max meets... Actually, no, Fury Road was Mad Max. Where am I going with this? It's sort of like all your favorite crazy post-apocalyptic factions and sort of thrown into one crazy adventure episode. It's going to be a lot of fun. I got a good co-writer. I got a special guest, too, which will be kind of fun.
All right, nice.
Yeah, so that's the next one in the pipeline, I think.
So how long have you been doing animation?
I'm coming up on a decade, I think. I started right around when Ninjago started. That really kind of helped propel my channel. So we have pretty similar birthdays there in that sense.
All right, okay. And you've got quite a few followers on YouTube, haven't you?
Yep.
Yeah, so you're doing pretty well, yeah. Cool. So
do
you do any other Lego or?
Well, I've started to get a little bit into mock building, which is a bit difficult because I don't have quite a bit of collection here in my apartment. And I've done a little bit with CGI and rendering. There's a couple communities that like doing that with like Mechabricks and Blender. So that's been pretty fun so far.
Cool. And you collaborate with other builders as well, don't you? I saw you had is it a competition that you do or something? I saw something about Christmas or something on your channel. Can you tell us
the Christmas collab.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of different events across the community for collaboration. It's funny you should mention the Christmas collaboration because my friend and I are scheming what we're going to do for this year. But often we'll get together a big group of animators who they all pitch something into a overall video and we compile it all together, or we make a big playlist of everybody's animations around a theme. And sometimes we just straight up have contests. One of the popular ones is a 24-hour animation contest. and everybody gets together and we all animate. Some of us do live streams where a team of us are all working on our animations and trying to stay awake. What I really love about our community is the general sense of collaboration and friendly competition, because there's always an event to get people invested.
All right, cool. Is there anything else you can tell us about animation? Any secret tips or anything like that?
Secret tips. I guess this is more of a general YouTube tip versus a strict Lego animation tip. But if you use it's the comma and period buttons when you're watching a brick film, or if you're watching, say, the Lego movie, you can use it to go frame by frame and see how they do different techniques. There's a lot of crazy moments in the Lego movie, and especially the Lego Ninjago movie, where if you pause at the right time, you'll have a minifigure where they're built up of random bricks to create a motion blur effect. Or you'll have something funny in the background where a couple minifigures are doing something unexpected. And honestly, a lot of those frame by frames and just the way that Lego has responded to the brick film community with those movies have been a lot of good inspiration. So if you really like those movies and you want to dig into animation, learn from the masters, because they're really good.
Yeah. So I see on your Blendtastic, you used to focus on the camera quite a bit, haven't you? To sort of focus on the blender and blur the background. I guess you can't really do that on a normal mobile phone, can you?
You somewhat can. I know with most smartphones, you have to tap the screen to get to autofocus in areas, but often, and it depends on the mobile phone that you're using, you can manually adjust the focus. So instead of the algorithm trying to determine what's in front or what you're trying to look at, you can go ahead and manually set it yourself. Now, a lot of it will depend on the lens, of course, but there are fairly good ways to control it.
All right. Okay. Cool. Is there anything else you can tell us about the world of animation?
There are tons of communities, tons of good animators. I could probably go through a list of friends that have really helped me and motivated me and inspired me, but I think that would have run way past our runtime.
Okay, cool. Right. I don't think I've got any more questions for you. I think that's a really interesting insight into animation, and thanks very much for taking part.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. This was a ton of fun.
Yeah, I'm going to end the broadcast, but if you want to stay on and we'll just have a quick chat.
Yeah, sounds good.